Okay, hello, everybody.
Hello. Thank you for being here.
It's such a pleasure to be here with everybody who's physically here and everyone online.
Oh,
Thank you
wow.
for being here. Hello, online people.
Hey, everybody.
Hello, hello. Good to see you. So Natalie is going to give us a little introduction once the tech is set. But I'm just so happy to be here with Janet and so happy to be talking about her books and about fiction and about Dharma in real life in fiction. And what is it like? And so we're looking forward to hearing from all of you with questions and comments, because we're all doing the same thing. We're all trying to navigate this real life with Dharma.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you I want to thank Natalie and Delgira and everyone at the Tibet House for all they've done to make this event possible and all the other work they do. So thank you.
Okay, Natalie, you're going to introduce us? Okay, she is. Thank you.
Scoot your chair a little bit. There we go. There we go.
Thank you.
Yes. There we go. All right.
All right, everyone, thank you so much for coming to this talk tonight with Dr. David Kittay and Janet
Ettele. Ettele.
Yes, Ettele. So Dr. David Kittay specializes in teaching courses on Buddhism and on Eastern and Western philosophy at Columbia University, most recently technology, religion, and future, interpreting Buddhist yoga, law and religion, and reincarnation, simulation, resurrection. With Losang Jumpsball, he is the translator of the Vajra Rosary Tantra and many other sutra, tantra, and commentarial texts, and is currently finalizing Tsongkhapa's Precious Sprout. He regularly lectures at Tibet House US, where he serves on the executive committee and the board at Columbia and worldwide, and is the president of the Tibetan Classics Translators Guild of New York. Figure that out in a second. He writes and lectures on the subject of compassionate lawyering and has served as a trial and civil rights lawyer, federal bankruptcy trustee, and a receiver for the Securities Exchange Commission. He is currently director and professor of philosophy at the Harlem Clement Course for the Humanities, teaching humanities to economically disadvantaged people in Harlem. Dr. Kittay's current primary research interests are in Buddhist philosophy and Tantra, Hermenetic yoga, and consciousness studies. Janet Kathleen Ettele is a musician and author who blends her background as a student of Buddhist Dharma with her art, bringing its teachings into contemporary practice through her writing and music. She has performed with Tencho Gyatso, the niece of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and Grammy Award winner and Tibetan flautist Nawang Kichong. A graduate of the Berklee College of Music in Boston, where Ettele studied music composition. Becoming an author decades later was unexpected, but a welcome opportunity. She worked in the entertainment industry until becoming a mother. She lives in Connecticut, where she has raised 2 sons and has happily welcomed the addition of 2 grandchildren. We thank you so much for coming out tonight, and please enjoy the rest of the lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you, Natalie. And I was wondering, now you've all read all the books, right? Okay, but some have. Okay, but I was wondering if Janet, if you could just give an overview of these wonderful books, that would be really terrific, sort of get into the plot.
Okay, so this is a series of books that are based on the teachings of Master Shantideva and his Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And it's woven in with the teaching is also verses from Shantideva's actual teaching. So it's woven into the body of the text. It is a series, and the same main character does go through the whole series. However, I've written the books in such a way that they can be read in any order. So You can read them from first to fourth, but you can also just pick them up, whichever one you want to first. So our hero in this story is a young man named Troy, and Troy is about early 20s, mid 20s, college student, guitar player. He's had a really rough go of things, beginning with his parents' divorce, and then his father's pretty quick remarriage to a woman named Maureen, who is really aggressively and abusively cruel to Troy. But while he's away at college, he doesn't really have to interact with her that much. But while he was away in school, one of his closest friends from home was tragically killed in an accident. And this was just unraveled him, and the devastating loss for him, and threw him off into where he actually just went into a phase of drinking excessively, getting into fights. His girlfriend broke up with him. He stopped going to classes. He failed, not surprisingly, he failed pretty much all his classes and had to return home to live with his father and Maureen and his little half-sister, Natalie. He knew he had made a mess of things, and everything he was living felt so wrong. And he also knew he needed to make changes. He just didn't know how and where to begin. And just like that old adage, when the student is ready, the master appears. Troy meets a new teacher in each book that presents some of the foundational philosophical views of Buddhism, along with also bringing in one of each of the 6 perfections in each book. So they're not fast-paced, suspenseful stories. They're stories that allow the teachings and their wisdom to seep in for the reader. And so while Troy is learning, spending time with his teacher, he's also living his regular, ordinary life. And we as the readers get to do that with him as he's learning, reflecting, meditating, and applying the things that he learns into his daily life. And yeah.
And
That's
it's really, it's so cool. I felt that as I was reading it, they drew me in. You know, it's different. You can read a book about Dharma and read the teachings, and that's fine, and that's good, and we all may do that. But when you look at it from the point of view of someone else, it's a different experience. And it almost, for me, felt like I could live another life. Anybody feel like sometimes you've lived the life you've lived, but you wonder what another one would be like? You know, I wonder about that a lot. And so through the eyes of Troy, I'm reading this stuff. And although Troy is he's different than I am, I find myself looking at it through his eyes. And that itself is really, really instructional for me. Janet, how did you, now, how long did it take you to write these books? 4 of them, 4 of the 6 perfections. I keep saying you got to write the other 2, but you keep saying no. But how did these come to be? Were you an author just writing a lot of stuff?
No, not even.
What happened?
So the story of that is, well, I had been attending classes at a Buddhist center in Redding, Connecticut, which I had been only a student there for maybe 2 years. And it was during one of the classes, there was a break, and I got to talking to this other man who was also a student there, but I hadn't known him before. And we got to talking about how really meaningful these teachings had been for us in our lives. And we found that we had this shared wish that wouldn't it be nice if we could somehow bring these teachings that have been so helpful for us in a more accessible way for Western culture. And found out that he had had his career in publishing and had started his own little imprint, like a side gig, to publish books, that was dedicated to publishing books on Buddhist Dharma. And he told me that he had been incubating this idea for several years, which was that he wanted to publish a series on Master Shantideva's teachings, on this particular one, The Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And as we talked more about it, even though I had just a minimal experience, I mean, really I never had written fiction. I, wrote letters and things like that. He invited me to write, he said, take a stab at writing the first 10 pages. And we'll see how it goes. So I went home and he said, we need to have a student character and a teacher character. And I thought, well, I teach piano. They always say, write what you know. I'll make the teacher character be a piano teacher. And anyway, he liked it and he said, let's keep going with it, and drew up a contract for doing one book first, and then depending on how things looked, we would do the next and the next. The whole thing from start to finish took about 15 years, but I was editing maybe the last 4 or 5 years because there was a little hiccup in the publishing of the 4th book. So that took some time.
So did Dharma help you get
Oh.
through the hiccup in publishing?
It did.
Because in your
did.
books, there's all kinds of stuff that happens. I mean, there's this, there's his father's second wife. There's the death of his beloved uncle.
In the
and
Green
Uncle
Book. yes,
Jonathan, yeah. And so, so one of the things that we were wondering about is, all of these experiences we've had, most of, we go through things, right? And how has Dharma helped? Now, like Dharma, what is Dharma, right? Dharma usually is teachings of the Buddha, right? And we talk about the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. It's one of those 3 really important things. And Dharma can also be used, it can mean kind of phenomenon or thing. But when we're talking about Dharma here, we're talking about the teachings of the Buddha, what the Buddha taught, which can also be teachings that are maybe not by the Buddha exactly, but are consonant with the teachings of the Buddha, very broad definition. Is it helpful? So I wonder, Jan, if you could talk a little bit about how Dharma helps some of these characters get through.
Oh,
Because I also, it'd be nice to hear this, because this is fictional, but I think we all have real experiences that are like this.
I think for Troy, who is the one we're really following in this, it's, learning to understand some of the basic things like impermanence, that nothing, even those suffering times are always changing, that because of impermanence, we have the potential to create something different. Nothing is stuck. We're never stuck in any one thing. I think also understanding the concept of karma for him was very helpful, to realize that there's a cause and effect, and what kind of causes do I want to create to help prepare for something different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Although, karma. How many people here believe in karma? Yeah. How many people here believe in reincarnation? Yeah. So these concepts are, they're different for us. I mean, karma, cause and effect, we relate to, but like, how does it really help? I'm thinking about, the big one with his uncle. He's with his uncle as his uncle is passing away.
Mm-hmm.
And how does that work? How is Dharma helpful with something like that, either in fiction or in reality?
Well, I mean, none of us know. I mean, there's a mysterious quality to karma, because if you understand karma, we also understand that we carry like an enormous amount of karma with us. So what's going to ripen when? It's when it meets its right conditions. In terms of how did understanding karma help with his uncle, or understanding
No, in general, how
general?
he
Well,
goes through this transformation, right? He's learning about Dharma from these teachers.
yes, yes, yes. So I think that was sort of a problem for him, because he's studying with his teacher, Jules, is talking about, as we understand karma, we try to create positive, virtuous karma. There's this opportunity to get free from samsara. There's this, all of these things that we as Buddhists will perhaps believe, but his uncle was not Buddhist. And Troy's question to him was like, well, how does that work? He's lived a really good life. He's been a wonderful father and husband, generous, kind man, isn't that good enough? And I think Jules has an answer for him, explaining things like, it's like there's some jury out there handing out karma tickets of good and bad. It's an energy, isn't it? It's like the momentum of what you create through your actions, and your actions are good. That is good enough,
Yeah,
I think. In my opinion, I mean, I'm no.
yeah. Does that resonate with you all? Helpful like that?
She's thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the things that I really liked about book is how serious Troy is about his study of the Dharma, because I always wonder about myself. Sometimes I'm serious about it, but most of the time I'm just going about my life, doing whatever. And just, and so being able to see the seriousness of it through Troy's eyes really reminded me of something that I was missing. And so I'm so thankful for that.
I'm
It
glad.
was really good.
I'm glad. I mean, you said, you were talking to me earlier about like Troy is so serious, and I said, well, he's been through some bad stuff. He knows what it's like to in his own version of going through hell, that when he's drinking to that extent, getting into fights. There was one fight he had gotten into where he hit somebody so hard that they hit the ground and were unconscious. And for that moment, he had this terror that, oh my God, I've killed him. And that just changed him. That was pivotal for him. And having come so close to that sort of experience, yeah, he's going to be serious because he doesn't want to ever live in that kind of space again.
And then he talks about at one point, because he's got a girlfriend, Maggie, and he's kind of crazy about her. And well, that brings up a whole bunch of other questions. In other words, what about love? What about, Buddhists are fond of saying we shouldn't be attached, right? But don't you love attachment? I mean, isn't it great? Don't you want to hold on? Isn't that the best thing about life? Yes, no, maybe. These are tough things, right? This is where the rubber hits the road, right? Because we love that stuff. And Troy at one point says he feels like he's commuting between his Dharma life and his real life.
Yeah.
Do you feel that too?
To a degree, but the more I've been doing this, the more I feel like, you're just bringing it with you no matter what you're doing. But there are places where you can like here, we can be speaking about it, but there are a lot of places where I go in life where, people don't want to sit down and talk to me about Dharma. So in that sense, there's like this different part of your, where if you're telling somebody, oh, I'm going to work out, I'm working with a personal trainer, that's like, oh, that's great. People are happy to hear about that sort of thing you're devoting time to. But are you to devote time to Dharma, you kind of see them glaze over and you just don't go there.
Yeah, I mean, you find that, Kristen, you find that? Yeah, I find that too. I find that too. Yeah. Like, I showed one of my good friends. I wonder if he's on. I showed one of my good friends the advertisement for this, and, I was being, a little egotistical, when I show him. And he said, yeah, I know. Went on to the next subject, so so often, if you're into Dharma, what do you do with it? How do you talk to someone? It's one thing when you're with Dharma friends, like we may all be Dharma friends here. That's great. But what about, what if your partner or your friend, right, doesn't care? What do you do about that?
You're asking me, I don't talk about it if they're not into it. But I live it, doesn't mean I can't live it.
But here's the thing. Okay. So I used to be a lawyer. I don't want to get into my cross-examination book.
Yeah, please don't do that.
I
to
won't do
me.
that. I won't do that. But don't we have kind of a duty to share the Dharma? I guess you can do it, in a skillful way, right? Not sort of, rubbing in people's faces and, in an obnoxious way. But, I noticed that in the very first book, and this blew me away too, the first verse you quoted wrote it down, was from Shantideva. The intention to benefit all beings, which does not arise in others, even for their own sake, is an extraordinary jewel of the mind, and its birth is an unprecedented wonder. Right? So I wonder about that too. For example, like my beloved wife, Jan, she's not into this stuff. I
Right.
think it's because she's really a bodhisattva. Like my theory is that Buddhists probably aren't better than anybody else, probably worse than everybody else. And so we need the Buddhism to kind of bring us back close to the level of average. But I don't, really talk about it so much. Although the other day I had to read her from Tsongkhapa's praises of Defended the Rising just because I thought it was so cool. She totally got it. But so that part of my life is not like Troy's. He's really thinking about this stuff and studying this stuff.
Right.
Right. So when do you bring it in and talk to people about it? Like, did you talk about it with your boys?
Now and then if it comes up, but my feeling generally is if somebody's interested and asks me something,
Yeah.
then I'll talk about it. But I don't know that people want you to I'm not an evangelical
Yeah.
Buddhist.
Yeah. What do you think? Do you all talk to? Yeah, Gary.
Hey, I'm very important. I think you should really say the title of the books
Oh,
and Janet's name very clearly, because these books are the most important piece of art that I've experienced. And she doesn't even know because she's so humble. I mean, we should mention the title, and everybody here should read these books, and they should tell everybody about them. It is the most important piece of art that I've experienced in the last 5 to 7 or 8 years. It's
Thank
that
you, Gary.
profound. And so mention the title.
well, the name of the book he was talking about was How Generosity Works. And that was okay. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was the first book in the series. And the second book is How the Root of Kindness Works. The third is How Patience Works. And the fourth is How Joyous Effort Works. Thank you, Gary.
Yeah. Very sweet. And I had that experience too, Gary. Reading this just brought me right back, in a way, right back to basics, which otherwise, I would have kind of forgotten about, and how great to be back in them. Yeah. What about, Janet, you're a musician,
Mhm.
and here you went and did this, and how do you experience connection between music and the Dharma?
I thought about that, and some of the obvious parallels are practice. If you're start playing an instrument, you need to practice it. And when you get away from practicing it, you get a little rusty, as I've done, because writing has sort of eclipsed my piano practicing. So there's that. One of the other things I feel is similar is that in meditation, oftentimes you just get into that real a space that you just don't have words to describe. And I feel the same thing when I'm playing music. It's sort of the same kind of thing. It's just sort of, it's a different space. It's a different kind of connection. And I think those parallels are there.
It's a really good point about practice. So
And
really,
you need a teacher. Well, most people do. There are those geniuses that just are born playing, but yeah.
wow. You know, do you all practice Dharma? I mean, I should practice it. Right, I do my little routine, but in terms of, focusing on those fundamentals. And then the question is, how much should you do it? Do you ever feel like you should take a day off from practice? Then because then it can become a drag, right? And yet this, as we see in the books, and I think as we see in real life, this can be so helpful to life's struggles. To life's struggles.
I'd be interested what everyone here thinks too, but I feel there's a lot of what we learn and begin to apply is sort of what we call that mind training, right? Where we really, by cultivating mindfulness, become aware of what our mind's activity is. And as we know, our mind's activity is going to precede everything else that happens. And
Right. And I'm just curious in terms of practice. I mean, I always am asking myself, should I practice more? And I look at Troy, and he's making such diligent efforts to do it. And I really wonder where he's going with it, And it's been so inspiring to me, and yet how many of you have busy lives?
yeah.
Right. But then there's one thing that Jules says to Troy, I think maybe even answering, correct me if I'm wrong, this question about commuting between his regular life and practice of Dharma. And Jules says, bring it into everything you do.
Yeah, that's in How Joyous Effort Works. And Jules is a luthier, which, if you don't know what that is someone who builds and repairs stringed instruments. And he kind of uses some of the luthier's techniques, like fret leveling and things like that, as metaphor and meditative support for the things he's presenting. But he's also demonstrating to Troy that, yeah, I had a family, I have a wife, I have children, and I've built a life, doing this sort of work. So what is that in the what is the eight something about right work, right? What is that one? Right mindfulness.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
right.
just checking all those boxes of why am I forgetting there's a whole thing. Anyway,
Yeah.
he's checking all those boxes. So
The
if you're,
Eightfold Path.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which are right view,
Right. Yeah.
right mindfulness, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right concentration.
No, you get that.
I'm missing one.
Well, right, livelihood, yeah, livelihood. I always remember the words.
Right meditation. Thank
Right,
you.
right.
Yeah. So I think that that's a nice way to go by. Like you don't have to be sitting on a cushion like 24/7. You have your meditation, but you bring it with you into your life. And I don't think you even have to be Buddhist to do that. Do you?
No, but I don't know, for some reason, and I want to ask you, Janet, how you came to Buddhism. For some reason, for some of us, it's one thing if you're born into a Buddhist family, that's one way. But a lot of us came to it in some other way. How did it happen with you, Janet?
Okay, I'll tell you, and then you can tell us how you did.
Okay.
I had been reading, this is probably in 2008, I had come across some books that I just kept reading more and more that were on Buddhism, and everything I read just felt so logical and grounded and practical and profound. And so in every book I read, it said, if you really want to bring these teachings meaningfully into your life, you need to find a teacher. And I thought, well, how do you do that? And I live in a small town in Connecticut where I had never seen a Buddhist temple. I didn't know any Buddhist practitioners. And so I thought, well, I'll probably have to come into New York City or Boston to find a teacher. So I got online, and to my surprise, 5 miles from my house, in a little town called Reading, Connecticut, there is the Tibetan Buddhist Center for Universal Peace. And it was there where I met Tibetan Buddhist monks who were not only really wonderful teachers, but they just by observing them, their presence, their sense of joy, their sense of peace, by experiencing their kindness, real kindness and patience and deep wisdom, like I knew I had encountered something that not only really profoundly resonated with me, but also had the potential to add really valuable depth and peace into my life. So that was 2008. And I can honestly say all these years later, I do feel a lot more peace in my life. So
I listened to you, Janet, and your sense of, I don't know what it is. It comes through to me. It's so honest and eloquent.
Thank you.
And that really comes through in your writing. It's just what a miracle that it turned out. And this place is called DNKL. And it's really a wonderful place. That's where Janet and I met.
Yeah.
Gary
Yeah.
hangs out there too. It's a really, really wonderful place with Geshe Darge and Rinpoche who comes. Yeah.
So what was your story? How did you?
Well, you know, it was just like Grace in the first book, and just like you, I read a book. I read a book by Daisetsu Suzuki. It was called Essays in Zen Buddhism. And I was about 15, and in the introduction, he writes about how when you fall in love for the first time, your ego feels a split in itself. And am very romantic. So that really, I like that. And so I started reading Alan Watts and all that. And then there was a Tibetan Rinpoche, Chogyam Trungpa, who was coming to Vermont. And so I hitchhiked up there and used to see him. And then one thing just led to another.
Yeah.
And then eventually, after I became a lawyer, went into the world in order to become more incarnated, I said, okay, I've done that enough. And I emailed Bob Thurman, right? And I didn't know Bob at all. And I said, I want to learn Tibetan and see if these Tibetans really know anything. And so he sent me to a wonderful Ladakhi teacher, Losang Jamspal. And since then, Jamspal passed away last year, and Bob have been my main and wonderful teachers. And I wanted to ask you about that also, about how do you find a teacher, and what's that about?
I don't know how you find them. I mean, I know I just explained how I found one, but it's maybe that's karma. I don't know. I feel very lucky to have found them. And you had asked me earlier about what happens with a teacher. Like when I was writing these books, because I lived so close, I was able to go over to DNKL and ask the monks. One of them I needed a translator for, but they would help me, to make sure I was understanding things properly. So what a wonderful way for me to learn was in the process of writing these books. And the other thing I noticed about these teachers is they really know how to ask you the right questions. They make you think. And that's always a good thing.
And these
Right.
teachers are so wonderfully giving about
Yeah.
about teaching. It's really quite extraordinary when you meet the real thing, how you know it. And I remember when when I first met Jamspal, I wanted to test him. It's kind of funny, and so I tested him. I said, "What is Dharma?" And thought for a minute, and he said, "Benefit others."
Hmm.
And I've never heard better definition. And that's what really his whole life was about.
Yeah.
He used to walk through Riverside Park picking up the garbage,
Wow.
yeah, just to clean up the place. And yeah, and the most modest, wonderful guy. And then there's Bob Thurman,
Yeah.
who has just been such a beacon,
Yeah.
and worked so hard. And he's teaching, teaching, teaching.
Brilliant.
It's really quite something.
Really is. Yeah.
And how do you know, like, then how do you know you found a good teacher? I mean, some of you looking for a good teacher? I mean, I know I always am. Sometimes I kind of forget about it and I just kind of go on and do my own thing. But it's all around us. At Tibet House, they have so many wonderful people coming through all the time. At DNKL, there everyone is.
Are all of you people, do you come here to Tibet? This is my first time I've been here, but do most of you come here often? Do they have teachings here that you attend? You're so lucky. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions? Things you think about Dharma in real life? Has it helped any of you?
I think this topic is so important, especially for I don't want to say American or Westerners, because there's lots of Americans and Westerners that grow up with religion, right? And I think people who grow up with religion perhaps have a lot of these teachings embedded in their life and culture. My
Mhm.
husband is Indian, and I see that. Like, some of these basic and fundamental things are just embedded in how they were raised with community and
Yeah,
telling the truth and being honest and being noble. Like, these are just basic principles of life.
yeah.
So do you find that this is kind of a unique Western American sort of issue that we have, because we don't necessarily grow up with religion as the basis of our culture? So we have, like Dr. Kittay was saying, like, some of us are just really seeking it because we just don't come from that kind of background where it's just part of how we grew up.
What do you think?
I think that's 100% right, Regina.
Yeah.
I do, and we don't. And then we meet someone, and it doesn't have to be someone who comes from a different continent. And that's what's so cool about the books, is that there are these different teachers, and who really impart this wonderful wisdom.
I wonder too, if it really needs to be religion. I like what His Holiness has said about secular ethics, and in the schools he was recommending that they have what he would call educating the heart, which would include things like what you're talking about, just kindness and generosity and all these things that don't need to belong to a religion. Oftentimes they do, but I think even, in our culture here, I think some people really aren't comfortable with religion and might find what His Holiness recommended. I thought I would love to see that happen.
Yeah, that's true. And this is, after all, His Holiness's place in
The
North
place,
America. And he's been such a wonderful force for this. I find that the religious element helps. Now, I was brought up kind of Reformed Jewish, not really, it wasn't really about God. And there's an energy in this going within in the Buddhist practice that for
Yes.
some reason just really grabs me. And then His Holiness wrote an introduction to these books.
Well, no, just to this one.
Well, okay, only one. Okay. And,
Well, I
no,
didn't
but-
mean it like that. I just meant like,
no, it's
didn't want to misrepresent.
it's so, well, Janet,
That was
you're wonderful.
really fortunate.
But, so, and His Holiness said that the Buddhism is in accord with reason. It's not just about faith, right? And that's so, he stresses that
Oh,
over
yeah.
and over again. And to me, I think I'm looking for faith. I think I'm looking for faith. And so for me, religion has a mojo that I really like.
Hmm.
And, but maybe that just goes to show that it's different strokes for different folks.
Well, he wrote that in the foreword, something about that. Oh, I can't read this. Print is too small. Can you read it at the bottom? Something he says something about based on reason instead of faith.
Yeah, he says, I hope this book enables the general readers to get a better understanding of the Buddhist teachings, getting conviction, not because of faith, but due to reasoning. And for me, the books are they're medicine, because they really do bring me back from my kind of, oh, I want to have this faith, to wait a minute, back to basics. And I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I think when you when you have the reasoning, then you've got something to build some faith on. Right?
Yeah,
Whether it's, choosing a medical treatment, you do your research and you find out what's the most reasonable thing for you to, and then you have faith in the treatment you pursue,
right.
right?
I know. I mean, now I know, but part of me, I'm just being honest now. Part of me says, nah, just take a leap.
Really?
Right? Yeah. Yeah, just take a leap. And so for me, the medicine in these books, wait a minute, David, can you believe that you should actually think about what you're doing before you do it? I mean, not that I never do that, but books, it's medicine like that. And when His Holiness says that, for me anyway, it's good medicine. Is it good medicine for any of you? Yeah, what do you think?
Like,
I love what you're saying about faith and that leap. And it makes me think about, like, we tend to live in this mindset that we need certainty for everything. And I think that a core of the teaching is that we have to become uncomfortable with uncertainty. I mean, that is what impermanence is. Everything is going to change, and we don't actually get to control it. So why not take the leap?
What do you think, everybody? Do you take the leap or not? I guess it depends on the circumstance. Any more thoughts about that?
We have a comment online that says
Okay.
faith. JP.
Faith shouldn't be blind faith.
Yes, and we have a comment after that, if a question that was referring to something before, if you guys would like to
Sure,
hear.
go ahead. Yeah, I agree with JP.
Well, if this topic no longer wants to be discussed, then the question before then is, any advice for writing about Dharma from a fiction point of view, or is it the other way around?
Writing fiction from a Dharma point of view as opposed to fiction from a,
Yes, this is from Robin Hart from Engage. Yes, or is it the other way around? Any advice for writing about Dharma from a fiction point of view? Rather, I guess, writing fiction, yeah, fiction from a Dharma point of view.
If I understand the question correctly, from my experience, it's, you create your characters. And they start to develop a life of their own, and you take them through situations where they get to engage in activities where they're going to have a reason to engage the Dharma. I'm not sure if that makes sense. Does that sound like I answered the question?
Well, yeah, but like, any advice, say someone was writing,
Right.
going to write a fiction book about Dharma. Would you
Mhm.
give, having been through what you've been through,
Mm.
what would you give them any
Oh,
advice?
advice. Well, be prepared to spend a lot of time doing it. Um, be prepared to really research a lot, which is a wonderful thing, because if you are interested in writing about it, it must mean that you're interested in knowing about it. So you'll learn as you go. Um, I hope you have teachers that you can go to for help, and guidance, because you really have that live interaction with a teacher is so beneficial, whether you're writing a book or not. But in this case, especially, you want to make sure, if you're writing the Dharma, you want to make sure that what you're writing is accurate.
Well, I'm just thinking it might be a good idea for some of us to get writing. I mean, have any of you written fiction? Or maybe those of you who haven't, would you like to take a stab at it? I know I would. And it's very inspiring. It's a cool question. Thank you for the question.
Great question.
Also, what I really like about the fiction aspect is in reading fiction, you kind of identify with the character, right? You kind of get in the body and mind of the character. And then you realize, wait a minute, it's a fictional character. And that's kind of the same exercise that we go through with our own characters. We kind of realize, wait a minute, I'm so serious about who I am. Maybe I'm just a piece of fiction too. And in a sense, a little bit, right? But then it shouldn't be blind fiction, like it shouldn't be blind faith.
Right.
But it's good to maybe take a journey into fiction. How amazing also that you had such support in doing it.
I was so grateful for that support. Oh, not only the support of the monks that I knew, but also the publisher, John Cerullo. He, especially in the first two books, he and I spent hours on the phone, not all in one sitting, but like a lot of time on the phone, is because he was a much more involved student than I had been at that time. I was still fairly new. So he was teaching me a lot. In the second book, How the Root of Kindness Works, there was one part where when I was just writing it, I felt like my skull was going to burst open. It was just so hard to get my mind around some of these concepts.
Yeah.
And then how do I put it into a story and make it sound nonchalant? It's a little tricky.
Could you talk a little bit about Mrs. Sternow?
Sterno. Mrs. Sterno. I only know that name because I named her after, she wasn't a related aunt, but she was someone close in our family that I just really loved. And so she was Auntie Margot Sterno. She comes up in the third book, How Patience Works, and she's elderly and she walks with a cane, and she has very old-fashioned type of way of speaking, her vocabulary and her, she calls Troy dear and that sort of thing. She and her husband, back in the 50s, her husband was a professor. And I see the inspiration for this story. I see his face on the Zoom screen there. Hi, Jeff. His father, my friend's father, is sort of what I modeled Professor Sterno's experience, was where he had been targeted by the McCarthy, how do I say it, McCarthyism. And as happened to Jeff's father, who had written a recommendation for someone that ended up being on the on McCarthy's list. And so at that point, you know, life was ruined. All he had done is written a letter of recommendation for this person, and everything changed. And so her story is about how they had an old family friend that they went to stay with who had studied the Buddhist teachings and was presenting to them the teachings on patience, which is why this was in the How Patience Works book, and how he got over his anger, because, you know, you have something like that happen to you and it's wrong across the board anyway. But so that was the example. And Mrs. Sterno's husband had died, and she used to come into the diner where Troy works and his girlfriend Maggie works. And she would sit every Thursday morning at the table and kind of imagine her husband, even though he was no longer living, sitting across the table from her. And she would write every time before she left the restaurant, she would write a little message to him on the placemat. And those messages Troy would pick up and read and take home with him, because she would just, and he was like fascinated by these things she would write. And she had sort of a mystical quality to her. Like you weren't sure if she was an elderly lady who was just a little losing it, or if she was really having, like, she would, every once in a while, she would like talk to somebody that wasn't there, and then she would give a teaching to Troy. And so she became his teacher, and they adored each other. They really did.
Now I have to ask you a question.
Mm.
I know Natalie has one, but I have to ask you, because Janet, as you speak, I know you're very modest about all this. You'd never consider yourself to be a teacher, but to me, you're really teaching. And I'm wondering, in terms of the story about Miss Sterno and her husband, you know, we're going through times today that are, you know, kind of crazy and maybe like the McCarthy era. And what about, how does what goes on with them, you know, what went on in the books and what you know about Dharma, how does that help with the situation today, where so many of us are feeling so uncertain about what may happen?
That's, you know, I think it's unique to the individual. We all have our own things that we draw strength from. You know, if we go by what the teachings say, which again, is this on blind faith? Do you accept this, or do you have reason to believe this? But they always talk about these cycles of a degenerate age. And, you know, maybe this is just karmically what we're, you know, have to live through. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it easy. For me personally, right now, I just focus on just doing my next best thing
Yeah,
in each moment, you know, because that's all I have.
that sounds a lot like Dharma to me.
Well, yeah, but I also went online to see what other countries would accept immigrants from America. So it doesn't seem like anybody wants us. So I'm like, okay, I just gotta.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, Natalie.
Comment.
Yeah.
We had a comment online regarding what you were talking about before with your book from Leona Brimmer. She says, when you become silent and the world becomes spaciousness, emptiness, and you have taken that leap into the unknown, your consciousness has been cleaned and you carry that love, brightness, and stillness to interact wherever you go. Yes.
Wow, that's beautiful. I wouldn't have a basis to say yes or no, but it sounds, can you read it again? Because that was a lot of words to absorb.
Sure.
When you become silent and the world becomes spaciousness, emptiness, and you have taken that leap into the unknown, your consciousness has been cleaned and you carry that love, brightness, and stillness to interact wherever you go. Yes?
Yes, it's beautiful. Thank you. That's Leona.
Yeah, it is beautiful.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. I'm feeling it.
Yeah, yeah.
Feel that as we, on the one hand that you can go with, oh my goodness, it's happening, what's happening? But then again, if you open your mind and see how everything is changing and interacts with everything else, which means it can change, and you can feel the brightness and feel the love between all of us and the potential love between everyone. It's just,
Mm.
it's wonderful.
You can as easily put your mind in that place if you choose to, as the like, oh my God, panic, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's a Dharma kind of practice of we have a choice of where we put our mind and how much power we give things that are going on outside us. And maybe what Leona wrote or is a useful thought to keep in mind.
It's also a beautiful meditation.
Yeah.
And your next book, going on to the
No, we're
fifth
not.
perfection,
We-
which is we're not, but maybe one of you could go.
Maybe, yes.
Maybe this is where we go. I mean, the six perfections. And we go from here to meditation and wisdom,
Yeah.
right?
One of the reasons I'm reluctant to do that in a story is I don't see how those two would really lend themselves well to fiction. But maybe I don't know them well enough. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that is familiar with the six perfections?
Write a fictional book about meditation. I could write a fictional book about meditation, about all the meditation that I haven't done.
Is that fiction?
Yeah. Um, no, but I really, I wonder about that. Well, I like this idea, Leona. Um,
Yeah.
Hi, can you
You
hear
think
me?
it could do it?
You can hear me?
yeah, because you think about Buddha's story, and Buddha went through everything he went through, and finally, after learning a lot about patience and effort, ethics and generosity, he's finally walking by the river after starving himself, and he meets a young mother. She gives him a little milk, and then he says, I feel okay. Maybe I'll sit down under this tree and meditate. And so the question is, maybe the same thing could happen to Troy. But then it raises, of course, it raises the whole question. And Janet, you're so modest, but the whole idea of a Buddha and of I wish to become a Buddha so I can help everyone,
Mhm.
right? Really means that we have to undertake it seriously ourselves, which is so why I love Troy's approach so much. And of course, then the question is, are we afraid to take that next big leap?
Well, aren't there different motivations for different people? Some people just want to like get through this life well, and they can use the Dharma to apply it to that purpose of just getting through, making this life a little better. And then what is the next capacity? They are people who believe in past lives and future lives, and they're thinking, well, let me practice in this life in order to have a better future life. And then we have those that are like, I really want to just get the hell out of all of this. And I have this aspiration to achieve Buddhahood. And that's another objective. So not everyone's going to have the same reason for practicing, are they?
No, I guess not. I mean, it depends, but I wonder, one thing the first quote from Shantideva, right, is
Yeah.
all about just benefiting others,
Yeah.
right? Which is such a wonderful way of avoiding the egocentricity,
Mhm.
that I know I suffer from immensely. but for example, my wife really doesn't suffer from because she's always thinking about everybody else, Jan is.
Yeah.
So this next step, right? We're all, we all operate under, well, I couldn't do this. Couldn't do that. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. But maybe there's a kind of confidence that maybe we need in today's world to go ahead and not hesitate to take the next big step. Although I agree with you, you have to do only what you're ready for, and the Dharma can help you in so many ways. Got a question or comment?
As somebody that's on the outside of it, I'm trying to figure out like what the question I would have if I was on the Zoom or in the audience. And I think the thing that I think brings everything together is this idea of translation. So we were talking earlier about the practical applications of Dharma, or how to translate that to people around us, or we might call that teaching. But when we're talking about the book, it seems like you started to write this book before you knew how to translate it and how to teach. And to me, the question of fiction then becomes the question of self-discovery and to use fiction as a path to actually learn about Dharma for yourself. And I think the humility of that might be something that also instructs us on why you're not ready for the next step, because you might have to do that in your next lifetime.
You you might be right. Yeah.
So I guess my question is more about whether or not you agree with that, and if you think that that writing was about self-discovery, like a lot of philosophers have said, or if maybe you felt like it was a way of, you knew it was going to be a way of teaching others.
I did not know it was going to be a way of teaching others. Well, I mean, I hoped it would be a way of sharing something that I was learning and I found meaningful. So that was a hope. And I thought more or less like, well, if someone gets to read these books and they're a little bit interested in them, then they can go to the more, like what I find a lot in the study I've done is like, a lot of these books are like really scholarly and academic, and my brain's not wired for that. So I thought this would be a way to kind of ease into something, get a little familiarity. And then if you go to like another teacher that's more like a monk or a nun, or, a higher level lama, or even reading, Robert Thurman's books or other, that it would just be like a nice little doorway to get in. But you're right, I learned so much in these stories and writing them. And also, I was telling David earlier, in some ways, there are characters and places that I write about that as my own little way of memorializing people that were once in my life and are no longer there. Of places, in Mrs. Sterno, in the third book, her garden is like the garden where I grew up. There was a white bench that's featured in that story that I used to sit on, that little white. And so it was in a way of bringing them into the story. But you're right. It's not like I'm left in the wings and not part of it. So thank you. That was a great question.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, what's your name? Yeah. Matthew. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
I have a question about that.
I have a question about languages. So language is kind of very limited tools.
Yeah.
And as you're a writer, how do you deliver the core message about Dharma with our limited, tools? I mean, sometimes when we use our language, sometimes we create the frames, then sometimes the fixed idea can be delivered to the people so we can create their world with the
Mm.
limited tools.
Yeah.
But sometimes Dharma message are unlimited, right?
Yeah.
So what was your challenging during your writing and the process?
What was challenging, like I explained in the How Root of Kindness Works that time when I thought just I was just like so much to try to get my mind around it. I believe it was something like verging on emptiness, but not, like the dependent or rising, but like the emptiness, I think was the thing he was trying to explain to me. And I'm trying to convert that into language. And it was for me, the best thing I could come up with was like metaphors, analogies and metaphors was the closest. I don't know that I did it well, but that's what I tried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In listening to your questions and also to Janet, I see that it's, at least when we're together, it's not just language.
Mm.
There's, when Janet speaks, I hear so much feeling. And, same with you and, everyone here. And it's kind of answering my question about the merger of attachment and love and Dharma. They kind of come together in us. And it's really a beautiful thing. And that's why in the books, we have real people. Troy went through these problems. He's not perfect. He gets a little too serious, like I keep saying. And that's a beautiful thing. It's real life. And so we're all here together, trying to figure out, how can we help each other? And, so here we all are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about the writing process, like actually putting pen to paper, if you did that alone or in an office space or with a writing group, or when you decided now's the time, or
Yeah. Well, that's a interesting question. So I worked, during the day. So my best time for writing was either in the morning and definitely on weekends. And it was great when winter would come because then you didn't mind being inside so much. I was alone when I would write, and I didn't write at a desk. I had a sofa in my living room where I would sit sort of horizontally on it with the paper in front of me on the next cushion. And I always would begin handwriting. And then once I got that someplace, rolling with that, then I would start typing it. Editing like all the time. And, I think that you get, for me personally, like when I'm writing, sometimes I'm like, oh, this just isn't right. Or like one day I think, oh, this is pretty good. And then I go back and read it the next day and I'm like, this sucks. This is terrible. And, by the time I finish the book, I'm like, who's going to want to read this? You just really, it's a really bizarre experience of doing it, but it was, I'm really glad I did it. I'm glad I took that time. And yes, for me, writing by myself was best. And I am happy with the way they came out, but I was just sharing that you have those times where you just like, oh, what is this? Because you're so close to it. So sometimes getting a little distance from something helps. Oh, there's another writer over there that has her hand up. I saw her raise her hand when she said that she's a writer also.
I guess my question would be, you mentioned at the beginning when you play piano, you enter this sort of flow state where you're touching something that's maybe ineffable, and also when you're meditating as well. I was wondering if you had that with these books as well.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. And also you mentioned the piano. Sometimes I find if I'm stuck on something, if I go to the piano and play, it's sort of like it unlocks things. I don't know why, but it was helpful to do. And if you don't play the piano, get up and cook something or do something else. It just kind of jogs your mind into another possibility.
There's a question online. Are your books available in audiobook format? If not, any chance they might be in the future? Thank you. That's from Ellen.
From who?
Ellen.
Ellen. Ellen, I'm sorry, no, I don't have them in audio. A lot of people have asked me about doing that. And, at some point it might, I think it's another investment and another project. Yeah. I don't know how AI would do with the pronunciation of so many of these words we use in the Dharma, or even getting my last name right.
Janet, it would be great if you would read it.
I think I need a little rest first before I start taking on something like
Yeah.
that.
Gary, you think we could produce something like that?
I agree. I think that she should do the reading.
Brahma convinced Buddha to go out and teach, because is that sort of right? Do I have that right? So we have to have Brahma convince you to go and write books.
No.
Who thinks Janet should write more?
Thank you.
Yeah, no, we get it. We get it.
But maybe an audiobook at some point. But yeah, I know if I did it, I would do it myself. But it's just a matter of getting the time and the energy and the place where I would do it. So and then figuring out that I'm not a techie person. I know there's a way to get them onto what is it? I don't even listen to audiobooks. I'm very old school. So it's foreign to me. So I'd have a lot to learn.
Robin Stanscliffe says Janet reads her books very well.
Robin was is one of my friends who is patient enough to, when I was working on the first couple of books, I could read things to her and see if it made sense. And she was patient enough over the phone to listen. So thank you, Robin. Yes. Oh.
Hi. I was just wondering, as you've been talking, like you've addressed this a little bit, but curious still, throughout the process of writing and also after, what was the effect which it had on your experience? How did it make you feel? And do you feel like it allowed you to learn? Did you feel any sense of fear or gratification or satisfaction or fulfillment? Like what was that experience?
Wow. While I was writing or after I finished? I'm not sure if I'm gonna, you let me know if I'm missing the mark on this, but the process of writing I found to be somewhat, for lack of a better word, magical. So I really enjoyed that. I'm losing the other part. Was it rewarding when the book was, I shouldn't say the thing, when the book was done and finished and out and my work had been finished on it, it was like a it's like you've launched a child into the world. And I felt one of the things was that you didn't, at least a child usually, hopefully, will call you once in a while and say hello, come to visit. But the book, it's like it's out there. You have no idea if anybody's reading it. You have no idea how it's hitting them, if they like it or if they don't like it. So whenever I did hear from somebody, I'm not sure, one of them might be on, I don't know if Andrew is on, but there was somebody that I've never met that wrote the nicest reviews and actually emailed me to say what's happening, where's that fourth book? Those sorts of things just kind of gave me a feeling like, yes, it was worthwhile. It mattered. I mean, of course it mattered to me to do it. I learned a tremendous amount. I did, one of the things about meditation, we often say it's like rehearsal for taking that practice into your regular life. And so writing about these things was in a way that served that purpose too. You're rehearsing these teachings. And so when things would come up, oftentimes I was like, without thinking, it was like you kind of handled something in a way that might have otherwise not gone so well. Is there anything I'm missing from what you asked? Is that good? Okay, thank you.
It's wonderful, Janet. And I'm also thinking, here you were, had you thought before John said to you, you should write these books, had you thought about doing this?
No.
Yeah, and it's
No.
just so amazing that that happened.
It is kind of,
And it just makes me think about how, wonderful sometimes it is when we can see someone and say, maybe you should try this. And maybe, that's a whole other lesson here.
there were a lot of like, pinch myself moments like that. Like all of a sudden I'm writing books. It wasn't something I ever saw on my radar. And the other pinch myself moment was getting this forward from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which was quite an email to receive. It came in an email with the PDF, and the PDF was really small font. So if you do get the book, you'll see it's like really tiny compared to everything else. But I will never forget that.
And also Bob Thurman, he wrote one
Bob
too.
Thurman.
Yeah,
And Jane Goodall.
yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that, Janet, it's just.
David Kittay.
Okay, but isn't that amazing that, that this whole thing happened? I mean, what a miracle.
Another miracle that I want to mention is that in the third book, How Patience Works with Mrs. Sterno, she gives Troy an orange book. And it's this orange book, which is translated by David Kittay. And it's the letters to the, how do you say it? Padampa Sangye. It's 100 spiritual instructions to the Dingri people. And it's just little quotes, little sayings that are like very pithy, very, very wise. And so Troy takes this book with him when he goes to meet with the teachers in this book, as a thing that he really got extra inspired by and really he had decided in this book that he was going to dedicate his summer break to diving more deeply into the Dharma teachings and he wanted to deepen his Dharma practice, as well as trying to figure out how do I balance life with, a very dedicated practice with an ordinary life of hoping to have a family and a career and all that other stuff. But so I just want you guys to know that this book by David is really important in both of those books.
Yeah, I mentioned my teacher, Losang Jamspal. After he taught me the Tibetan alphabet, we translated that. We translated this, means he translated that, and we worked together, and it's just so wonderful. But it also shows the wonders of a sangha, of a group of people who are interested in this, and what happens when we all get together and do these things. It's so wonderful to see everybody, and everybody online. And I would just say, let's keep up the good work and help each other, be as good as we can be.
Yeah, we need each other. That's interdependence is another one of those themes that's through the books, is like none of us is really living in isolation, even when sometimes we feel isolated. We're really not.
Does anybody feel isolated sometimes? Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, we don't have to be. Although maybe that's just a part of life too. Yeah.
There's a quote online or a question. Could you please quote something from Shantideva that you found particularly meaningful or helpful in your life?
Something. Well, again, I'm going to need my glasses. I can't see the small print.
You got it?
No, I don't have my glasses. I there's actually that first quote that that David read from How Generosity Works, and the one in,
Good one on 132.
well,
He said
there's,
you can also paraphrase if you.
oh, paraphrase. I liked the opening one that I used from Shantideva in this fourth book, How Joyous Effort Works. He says, just as the wind blowing back and forth controls the movement of a piece of cotton, so shall I be controlled by joy, and in this way accomplish everything.
So beautiful. And then
It-
what's followed by that, what Janet wrote that begins the
Oh.
list, right after that I love so much, is there's something sacred about rivers, the way they carry life within them, like a mother carries her children in her heart, all breathing the same loving essence, no matter how distant they flow. Oh, those two things together. That's beautiful. Thank you for the question. That's so cool. Like the wind is controlling the piece of cotton. And so we're like pieces of cotton being blown by the wind of joy.
And I think there's a quote, one of the passages, I don't know which one, but Gemed Kensho Rinpoche Lobsang Jampa talked about this when I was first speaking to him about this book, again through a translator. But I believe it's like, joyful effort is like that wind in your sails that keeps you moving, keeps you going. And I think, how do we get joyful effort? And it's when you really know the value of something that you're trying to accomplish, whether it's in the Dharma or in just regular life, when you know the value, you're pumped to do it. And that does give you the energy to, even when you're tired, or actually maybe you're more energized, but even through those struggles and tough times that we all have to go through.
Feeling some wind in my sails, Janet. What about you all? Isn't that a beautiful thing? Just to feel the wind in our sails propelling us. Oh, so great. Any other questions there, Natalie?
Well, as it's 8:25, and so we have some people doing they're expressing their
saying goodbye?
gratitude. They're
Oh.
saying, so Louisa says, what a lovely evening, and one that embodies so much of the kindness and compassion of the teachings. Thank you both so very much.
Thank you for being here, everybody.
Sweet. Well,
Thank you.
thank you all for coming. Thank you so much, Janet.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here with me. And there are copies of books in the gift shop, and they're 100% donation to the Tibet House if you choose to buy them. And it's my way of saying thank you. I hope that they sell, but it's my way of saying thank you. And really, it's funny, these books aren't this wasn't a business venture by a long shot. It was like, I really felt these needed to come out, or that once I started, it was like, I need to finish this, at least through this book. And so I'm really happy to be able to say it's finished, and really grateful to all of you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Natalie.
Yes, thanks,
Couldn't have
Natalie.
done it without you. Thanks, everybody. We did it.